Hello, my name is Ariel, like the mermaid. If there's one thing that the internet as a whole has never really been completely consistent with, it's reliable fact-checking. Now, that's not to say that traditional forms of media have always been consistent with their fact-checking, Fox News, but the internet has a particular problem with reliable fact-checking because on the internet, pretty much anybody can post anything they want and can say can just make up completely facts that are completely untrue, and they're not really held accountable for it unless they're attached with some sort of organization or whatever. But if you're just a person who decides to, start a blog or start some sort of independent thing on the internet, the fact is you're not really going to be held accountable for your fact-checking, especially if you're anonymous on the internet. Now, these problems with fact-checking exist in many places throughout the internet, but one place that I've noticed it occasionally become a problem is on the site Tumblr, probably just because that's a site that I actually use, whereas a lot of other sites I don't really use. But it applies to a lot of different forms of social media, but I find on Tumblr it's often becomes a particular problem because Tumblr deals with a lot of social justice issues, and the fact is, if you're defending certain issues, but you're using faulty facts and faulty information and faulty statistics, even if you're making a point that is correct and that is a good point to make, if you're backing it up with false statistics or just untrue facts, then it's going to make your argument all the more or less convincing, and eventually when it comes out that the facts are not true, then it's going to work against you when you're making your argument. Now, it's difficult on a site like Tumblr where, it's easy just to, kind of go through your dash and just favorite and reblog things that you seem kind of good and seem to be making good points. And probably in the past, if you look through my blog on Tumblr, I'm sure you could possibly find some things that maybe have some faulty statistics or faulty facts. And I mean, it's hard because it's hard. You have to, actually, do some research, and most of the time when people are just going on Tumblr, they're not really in the mood to actually completely fact check everything that comes up on their dash. But I think there's certain things to look out for as things that you might want to do at least a little bit of research to recognize that just in case the facts are completely wrong. First of all, if a post includes anything about events, whether they're recent events or historical events or any kind of events, things that happened, if it says something happens, then you want to make sure that that thing actually happened and that it's not just a complete fabrication. Because then if you're completely spreading things that are not true about an event, then that kind of just completely destroys your argument if it's all based on an event happening. Certain issues that have to do with specific events, especially events where there is some doubt and where there is, a little bit of a discrepancy between different accounts, even if, you're pretty sure that your perspective on it is correct, it's important that you aren't spreading misinformation about events, about what happened, and because that just will cause more confusion about a thing where there is already doubt. So, I mean, sticking to the facts is important. Another thing to look out for is statistics. Anything that involves numbers and percentages and this amount of people do this and one in this number will do that. Those kind of things. Any kinds of generalizations using statistics are things that are important to check because that's a very specific fact. If it includes a number in it, you might want to make sure, first of all, check where is this coming from? Where is this statistic coming from? What is it based on? Is it, or try to find a source that also supports that statistic. I mean, the difficulty is where are these statistics coming from? A lot of times it's not, they're conducted through surveys or through studies, different kinds of research studies, and you have to figure out, it's hard, but you have to figure out where they're coming from, what kinds of groups are they using. For example, if a college study that's using a random group from a particular college, and it says something about like 40% of college women do this, but it's based on a sample group from one college, that's not necessarily going to reflect all colleges. And similarly, any kinds of things like that, or if it's saying something about this percentage of people do this in America, if it's using a sample from like one town, that's not going to necessarily provide very accurate results for the entirety of a whole country. Things like that are very important to look up, and it's because if you're making an argument and you're using faulty statistics, then people are going to be able to, if they figure out that your statistics are wrong, then it's going to completely destroy your argument. And also, I mean, sometimes your argument might just be completely wrong because you're basing it, if it's entirely based on just facts that are completely untrue, then you just might be on the wrong side of things. And a big thing that's important to remember when you're dealing with facts is being careful about the interpretation of facts, because even if technically like a source you're using has like statistics or facts that are correct, and this is a thing particularly with statistics, is statistics can be, technically you can give the correct statistic, but you can present it in a very misleading way without that much difficulty, and a lot of news sources do this a lot of times, sometimes deliberately to promote a certain agenda or whatever, but sometimes just to sensationalize things. News people will just kind of make a statistic seem a lot more extreme than it really is. And it's important to really be careful about that and recognize that statistics can be twisted in different ways. And a big thing to remember with that is the idea of that correlation does not mean causation. And an example of that, now this is a theoretical example, not necessarily a real example, but for example, if there was a correlation between cigarette smoking and people getting bad grades in school, that does not mean that cigarette smoking causes people to do bad in school. There's a difference because there's all sorts of different factors that could sometimes it could just be a coincidence, sometimes it could just be, could be another factor causing both of these things. Just because thing A and thing B occur in a similar way does not mean that A causes B or that B causes A. So, I mean, because, sometimes, like, there could be all sorts of possibilities in this kind of situation. It could be that people who get bad test scores smoke, or more likely it could be like certain people that come from certain backgrounds in the first place tend to smoke, and they also tend to not get good grades. There could be all sorts of reasons why there could be this correlation. I'm not saying that this is a real correlation, this was just an example to illustrate a point. But the thing is that there are all sorts of statistics like that. I mean, including things like, actually, I think there have been several statistics like that, even though, yes, it is an important, it's probably not a good idea to smoke tobacco because it's not good for you, it's unhealthy, and that has been scientifically proven. A lot of times, in an effort to stop this kind of thing, people will present statistics in misleading ways, and the fact is that's just not a good thing to do. Even if you're promoting a good cause, arguably, then you still need to present that cause with accurate facts, not in a misleading way that causes false interpretation of facts. Correlation does not mean causation. Sometimes it does indicate causation, but it's not always, doesn't always mean causation.